Hello and welcome back, and that's right, today we're returning to the subject of Plex Media Server in our continued series on different NAS devices with their CPUs and how they perform in Plex Media Server. And today is the turn of the Intel N305, an 8-core i3 processor, which right now you can pick up in DIY form or turnkey. And we're going to be doing today's test utilizing this. This is the Terramaster F4-424 Pro. It retails for about $599 to $699 nicker, and we're running Plex Media Server on this device. If we open up the control panel here, you can see there is the system, and there is our CPU running there, and there is the N300 there, or the N305 more precisely, that we're utilizing. Now it has just shy of 10,000 multi-thread rating there on Passmark, and in today's video we're going to be looking at 1080p, 4K and 8K media. We're also going to be taking advantage of hardware transcoding thanks to our use of a Plex pass. On the right hand side of the screen here we can go into the transcoder, and as you can see we've set it to make my CPU hurt, and there at the bottom we're ensuring that we're using the integrated graphics that's inclusive of that CPU. Very important to note, if you are going to be utilizing a NAS or indeed any kind of server really for Plex Media Server, if you intend to start reshaping files, that is, make them smaller, bigger, change the audio quality there, have them so that if you're accessing it over the internet and reshaping the file and converting it, a popular term for that is known as transcoding. There it is there on the right hand side of the screen. And if you're running a system that's got integrated graphics, it means you can get the job done with lesser CPU resources, as there is an element of that CPU that's designed to do the job. And that's why the N305 has got a popular CPU, notwithstanding having relatively low power consumption. On top of that, it has a very good integrated graphics engine on board, and it means that you're going to be able to stream 4K media and transcode 4K media across multiple streams. Now in the course of this video we're going to be utilizing both the web browser and the native Windows appliance. Reason being that sometimes we're going to want to action conversions and transcoding, and other times we're going to want to play natively. So we're going to be using both of them and hopping between the two. You'll see it when I do. And on the right hand side of the screen there is going to be the measurements there. This is the CPU being utilized, memory being utilized, and bandwidth as well. And I'm pleased to say that this system is running on 2.5 gigabit Ethernet connection, and this NAS arrives with a 2.5 gigabit Ethernet connection on back. So we've got a 10 gig output there from this local PC, but on top of that we're also using a 2.5 gig wired connection, so there'll be no bandwidth limitations throughout the course of our testing. But just to give you some idea of what we're going to be doing here, here's a low-end 1080p file. As you can see, we open that up there on screen, running in original quality. 3 megabits per second is pretty, decent quality 1080p. And on the right hand side of the screen, you can see the file being played, and CPU utilization is borderline non-existent. It is not taxing this system at all. However, if we switch to an HVEC file here, highly efficient video codec, where some systems may need a license to do so, we're able there playing the original quality. It was a little bit harder work, but what we want to do is convert this file. We're going to convert to 160p, aka potato quality. You're never going to do that realistically, but if you are streaming media remotely, you almost certainly are going to start converting files when you're on a more metered internet connection there, something like a hotel or whatever. And as you can see there on the right hand side, the word transcode with HW in brackets. That means we're using hardware transcoding. That's how you should tell whether, when you are accessing media remotely on your Plex Media Server, that you are doing so using integrated graphics if they're available. And keep in mind, if you don't have a Plex Pass, you're not going to be able to use integrated graphics on, or even a graphics card in your system for hardware transcoding. I know I repeat this with every single video that I do, but it's important because some of you may come to this video not watching the rest of the series. But let's crack straight on now into a 10-bit HEVC HDR file here, playing in original quality like an absolute dream there. No problems. It's a 30-second file. This is around about 35 megabytes per second. This media file, if we open this up and downgrade it down to 240p, go down to the CPU, and again, the CPU is not feeling trouble. So already we can tell that this 1080p file we can play absolutely easy as hell, and we could run multiple of these files, streamlined, lovely stuff. If you look at the memory utilization here on the right hand side, you can see the Plex Media Server is using just 0.34% of our total memory on this system, and as you can see, if we go down to the resource utilization, you're able to see we're running on 8 gig of DDR5 memory inside this system. And on top of that, while we are running this, it might even be worth opening up the file manager so we can bring up here on screen the kind of file sizes that we're talking about here. Because you'll see, even though we're playing the same 30-second file for this portion of the video, at one point, that simple 30-second file is 1.4 gigabytes in size. Now, if we go back into the Plex Media Server and we'll go to our highest 1080p file, this is a 100 megabits per second HEVC file. We play it there, playing in original quality, and as you can see, we've cut it through, but we're seeing a slight pause there. Now, sometimes this can be bandwidth related, as you can see there, and often the way to resolve this is to get out of the web browser and into the desktop client, because Chrome is not ideal for this kind of data transmission sometimes. Now, if we knock that file down and we go down to a 328p file, it's absolutely fine. And as you can see, the memory utilization in the tab here on Chrome still remains the same, but it does mean that once we get to a certain file bit rate and certainly a file size, sometimes the web browser is just not going to cut it. And that's where we make our way over to the desktop client. Let's pin that there. Right there on top of that, we go into our N305, go back into these files, find that cheeky little file that we've just been trying to play. There was a 100 megabits per second HEVC file there, and we play it, and now it'll play like a dream. It can play that fine, and again, utilization very, very low indeed. And if we go down to that potato quality 160p conversion to really tax the system, again, it converts it. The dark orange, known as buffering, is doing absolutely fine there. The playback in light orange is well outpaced by the buffering, and on the right hand side of the screen, CPU still showing no difficulties there. Now we're going to move into 4K, and again, these are all tests for single file testings there. We have to keep that in mind, and this time we're going to go for 120 megabits per second HEVC HDR 4K. Now, this file is around 700 megabytes, and it's still a 30-second file, but as you can see, it's playing in original quality, and we go down to the CPU still not troubled. This thing is doing the job. If we convert it down, and this time we go down to an awkward 328p, which is generally a very difficult compression in most cases, it's still running like a dream, still using hardware transcoding. It will convert that sign there, will upgrade and refresh in a moment. There we are, hardware transcoding, and it played absolutely fine. Now we go to a 200 megabits per second file here, 4K HEVC HDR. Keep in mind, of course, you are not going to have many files like this. You are going to have to be running high-end GoPros, real raw media files, very little off-the-shelf kind of Blu-ray purchased quality, or even stuff you download online, is going to be this higher quality file here. This is around, I think, 400 megabytes, maybe even close to 500 megabytes per second, megabytes, I should say, file size. But playing like a dream, CPU is still barely getting out of bed there. I've got to respect this process of what it's doing. And then we've got the big boy file. This is our 400 megabits per second 4K HEVC HDR file. And again, although this is the highest we've seen the CPU reach at this point at just 8%, 8% is nothing. And if we convert this down to the laughable 240p quality there, again, had a slight pause for thought, but it still plays the file, still converting the file, absolutely fine. And once again, let me remind you, this file, if we go into TOS again, this is the 400 megabits per second file, 1.4 gigabytes inside for 30 seconds there. That means 2.8 gig per minute. Think of that as a 90-minute movie. That's insane. Now, before we make our way into 8K picture quality here, I do want to take a moment to talk a little bit more about 4K and non-30-second files there. So, for example, we have two 4K files here. We've got an an H.264 file that we can play here, known as Into the Cave, playing in original quality. Go down there. CPU utilization 1.5%, not really anything to be concerned with. And if we skip along around the file, kind of really tax the system a little bit. It does have a large dark moment in the middle, so it does look like it wasn't playing, but we can skip around the file. And again, this is a file that we're streaming remotely. Go around, really annoy the server by flicking around this big file. This file is just shy of 9 minutes long as well. CPU utilization still dealing with things absolutely fine. What about if we convert the file? We'll go for an automatic conversion where it scans our local connection to turn the file into a more relevant file. Remember, we're not using right now the client application. This is in the web browser. Let's convert this down to say 720p. This large 4K file, we're going to let it play, and this time we're really going to muck around with it. As you can see, there's our hardware transcoding happening there while it's preparing the file. And this time, once we skip around, it's not going to be as responsive, but it's still going to be able to convert that. If we hop around a few minutes at a time, play that, move that, go back. Small delays, but again, these are largely understandable delays given the bandwidth there of this file being played. As you can see, the tab there has gone up to 222 megabytes in utilization in the tab there. We're still using hardware transcoding, but again, the CPU has barely scratched itself out of bed right now. Lovely stuff. And if we make our way over to the HVEC file, the highly efficient video codec, we can open it up. This goes into automatic conversion due to the web browser. They're having difficulty with it, and as you can see, it's converting that file in the web browser and it's playing it there. It's having to work a little bit harder, but it's still converting the file, and utilization is still alarmingly low. So what about if we go ahead and play that same 4K file there? Let's go into our 4K media here via the client application, and it's going to be roast duck. And this time we're going to play both files in original quality here on the client app and via the web browser in a converted format. So let's do that now. We're going to play both files, pop them side by side, make sure both of them have got original quality there, converted quality there. Move those side by side, and as you can see there on the right hand side, the CPU has finally started to notice something. We're seeing PLEX at 5.46, we're seeing both files being played, and what about if we transcode two lots of data at once? So now they're both going to be running at a conversion and converted mode. We can see hardware transcoding, that one will catch up in just a moment, and CPU utilization is still absolutely fine with these two rather dense 4K transcode. Remember, this is a 60 megabits per second 4K HEVC file. This CPU is absolutely having a field day. Now we try 3 files being played, and all of these are going to be the same Beauty of Taiwan HEVC 30 megabit file there. We're just no playing around. Let's just play the file on all 3. Again, I will add on this one, I'll make sure that this one's also going to do a conversion, even though all 3 are going, the original browser ones here are running at conversions to start with. One of the files, potentially a bandwidth restriction there, is being problematic, but we can see that there with the conversion. See those conversions. Again, all 3 are being registered as playback there. They're all playing. We just can't see them right now. Although that one, we can see from that dark orange light there that buffering is still taking place. But all 3 are doing hardware transcoding. And the CPU initially spiking at, I say spiking, at 7.5. It's still playing fine there. But needless to say, there is still that bandwidth issue there happening. If we convert that down to 328p, will that play the file? This may be a restriction of our web browser, and if we open up here the task manager on my local PC and have a little look, we can see there's still a decent amount of utilization, but we have to also include there our OBS, what I'm utilizing to record all of this, which is perhaps having its toll. Nevertheless, I can't really call this test a complete success there. It's played 2 of those files well, but it's still not a complete success for me. Which brings us into the realm of 8K. We've got a few 8K files to play with, so let's not waste any time. We'll go straight into Helium. This is an HEVC file, and once again, this is where playing files like this in the web browser becomes exceedingly problematic. Notwithstanding the conversions there, which are definitely going to need to happen there. Look at that CPU spike there. It just shot up to 80%, and this gives you some idea about the capabilities of some of the hardware transcoding engine here, made possible via the integrated graphics graphics. Now 8K is something that Plex isn't really geared for very well right now in the early stages of 2025. You can play 8K, but I won't say that streaming on it is going to be particularly smooth. Even RAM utilization, it's the first time in this whole video where RAM utilization has suddenly spiked up. We've seen a huge jump up in terms of utilization by the Plex Media Server application here within this NAS system. Now, if we come out of that or convert down to something more manual, because what it's trying to do there is assess what we can play there via the web browser. But again, look at that utilization and how crazy that is. Playing 8K via a Chrome tab was never going to be a walk in the park. And for that, once again, we've got to make our way back into the client application. Whereas when we play it here in the client app, we can see that 8K playing like a charm. And you can see right there, not only is it playing fine, but as the CPU now starts to recover from what it was trying to play earlier on, and you can see there, direct playback off that 8K file, CPU utilization has come back down and it's playing native 8K over the local area network. What if we go for some conversion? So we'll convert it down to, let's say, a manageable 480p. Perhaps you're looking this on your phone remotely from the other side of the world. It's converted 8K down absolutely quick as a charm. As you can see right there playing, CPU utilization has gone up a few percent, currently at 5.48%, but not too bad. But once again, 8K, as you've seen before, it does tend to impact memory utilization there. And this system arriving with 8 gig of memory, I do think it's worth highlighting that if you're going to be streaming 8K on the local area network to devices that have the Plex client application, maybe get more than 8 gig of memory inside your system. You'll thank me for it later. Now, if we go for another one here, that was a 23.9 frame rate file. If we go down to a 60 frames per second MKV, this is Peru 8K. This is a much denser, higher res quality file here. Again, running at close to 20 megabits per second there, playing in original quality. Small bump there, but overall playing like an absolute charm. I've accidentally paused the file, but if we skip around, we can skip around this 8K file. Keep in mind, looking at the bottom, dark orange means buffering has taken place. If we go for a longer file, for example, what's the longest 8K file we have? This is a 6-minute 8K file at 60 frames per second. This is playing at original quality, 20 megabits per second, 4K, and again, that dark orange represents how much is buffered. The dark area means no buffering is taking place. So if we highlight the CPU and I just go ahead and start skipping around this file over the local area network, it's still playing the file absolutely fine there. It's doing its job, and CPU utilization is still yet to spike. And hell, if we convert this 8K behemoth file down to just 160p, which is like 4 potato pixels, it's still playing absolutely fine. Skipping around is obviously going to cause something of a delay, and no doubt we're buggering around there with the bandwidth in some horrific ways. We've almost hit gigabit network requirements at one point there, but playing fine. Skip around. CPU's not exactly enjoying it. Again, converting 8K down to 160p, who's going to do that? But nonetheless, it's still able to carry this off thanks to that hardware transcoding there, putting it down to SD quality. And really, I think I should just end it there, because frankly, I think if there's one big takeaway from this video, is that the N305 is ready to stream a lot of simultaneous 4K files. I do think that upgrading from the initial 4 GB of memory is what's going to be needed on this particular NAS. And thanks again to Terramaster for supplying the unit for today's testing. If you are interested in getting one yourself, you can get it from B&H right now for $699, get it from Amazon right now for $649, and there are higher grade models like the one with 10 GBE as well, and you can stay tuned for that when we take a look at the Max series of devices very, very soon. But apart from that, you can also get it from their own site, and again, retails for 629 quid, and obviously dollars, euros, it's going to be slightly different. But thank you so much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this. I'm going to continue this series. The next CPU up on the block is the i5-1235U. If you've got any other CPU requests in this series for Plex, let me know. But apart from that, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.